Dr. Eric Stinnett and Mr. Charles Youngs are here. Dr. Stinnett is the director of the EDD program here at Point Park University. Everybody who's watching this, for the most part, will know who you are because they came through you to get into the program. Tell us about the practicum. What is the practicum?
Well, our practicum is definitely a requirement for this program. It's one of the first things that students experience when they come into our program, and our practicum, quite frankly, it's a demonstration. Our students, they have to demonstrate, it's an authentic demonstration where they have to show us that they can lead. I think the practicum is a hands-on experience that bridges that intersection between theory and practice. So our practicum is a requirement for students that they have to really find a way to take the work experience and show their leadership there as well as in the program.
So it's also key then to the leadership component. Why leadership and not the administration part?
So there's actually two major components in this program. The first is to be a scholar and complete research and complete their dissertation. But what makes our program unique and different is you also have to demonstrate that you can lead. We want people leaving this program as an outstanding leader that can, represent Point Park in themselves, reflect and develop to really be a total leader. And really, our motto is "Who you are is how you lead." So this practicum and this component of leadership is really critical for our program.
Now, Charles Youngs is one of our doctoral students. Soon, over the next few months or so, he'll become a doctoral candidate.
Correct.
That means he's gone through all of his coursework, and currently you're working on your dissertation.
That's correct.
So you've gone through the practicum experience. Share with us just briefly, and I have several questions I'm going to ask you. Briefly explain to us the guideline for completing the practicum reflections.
Right. I created the guidelines for the practicum reflections basically just as tips or recommendations to help students go through that process. I think of all of them, I would say highlight a couple in terms of being strategic as a learner who is going to complete the practicum. Start thinking like the Total Leaders suggest, the Total Leaders program. Familiarize yourself with the standards as well as the Total Leaders pillars, so that you start seeing the connections in your daily work as you go through your day, and you can then start logging those in the practicum, and early on set up a spreadsheet to do so.
How should students, Charles, write the practicum reflections?
First of all, become familiar with those standards. So when you choose a standard, then really look at the language, drill down into the subsections and so forth of the descriptions of the standard, and notice which pillars they're addressing. And you want to demonstrate your understanding of those standards, so use that language in connection to the event that you're describing, particularly in the rationale for why you chose that standard, and in the reflection body itself.
Is there a good way to chart the experiences on the performance reflection sheet?
On the reflection sheet, you're really, again, going back to the standards and looking at the language. You also want to keep track of all of your all of your reflections on some sort of spreadsheet. It's a place for you to keep track of all the standards. What I did on the spreadsheet was I took a column for every standard and substandard, and then listed down the dates and the topics of the reflections. So that created a matrix where I was keeping track of the individual standards as I was filling it out, as well as tallying the hours.
Now, is there, when you begin to think about documenting your meetings with your supervisor, because usually a person has a supervisor doing the practicum, how should they document those particular meetings?
I did that on the same spreadsheet, only down below. So I was keeping track of the topics that I was discussing with my supervisor, the date, times, and then a separate tally of the hours.
Now, there is something else that's going to be a part of that practicum experience where students have to log their experiences. They have to log those particular hours. Did you use the same spreadsheet for that, or how did you log the hours, especially as they relate to meetings with the cohort coordinator, those types of things?
Right. That was a separate spreadsheet to log those hours because they are accounted separately.
What kinds of things did you put into your spreadsheet?
If you're speaking of the supervisors'
Yes.
meetings and so forth, as I worked through the coursework, different topics would come up, and or simply the out of the process of my daily work and my career, starting to notice the connection between the pillars and the standards and what I was experiencing in the workplace, bringing those up for conversation with my supervisor.
How important is it for doctoral students to think in advance, to do the planning, to lay out how they're going to chart those particular things that are a part of the practicum?
Again, being very familiar with the standards is key because, and thinking, and really the whole process is about reflection. So you are reflecting on what do I do daily, what do I maybe not do, and that I should be doing, or I could look for opportunities and make opportunities for myself to apply my talents in the regards to the standards. One thing I think of too is, some of the standards are very specific in terms of what you're to attend to. One has to do for budgeting purposes, and maybe you're not a person that necessarily has budgeting in your work. So that's an opportunity for you to talk with your supervisor or find somebody who does budgeting and maybe shadow them, maybe read articles, do some research, and then reflect upon that experience.
Do you come up with an outline of the required contents of the portfolio? Because sometimes students may not understand the practicum experiences and how that fits into the portfolio. So how did you lay out your portfolio in the end?
In the end, well, one thing that helped me was as I created the documents, I coded them by not only the reflection number, but also the standard or corollary and the appropriate numbers and letters for the substandard. So when I was putting whether you're going to be printing them out and putting them in the table of contents in a binder, or whether you're going to be putting them on the online portfolio, you know what the content is by using your spreadsheet, which has the topics, as well as this coding of listing standards. For instance, if I was doing my first reflection and it was attending to standard 2B, then I would just call that in the file name, I would call it reflection 1, S for standard, 2B. And so the file names themselves create an index that moves then into the process of building a table of contents.
Dr. Stinnett, are there sample docs or documents that students can look at with all of the things that Charles shared with us today, and where might they find those docs?
Absolutely. So there's several places you can find documents, templates. One would be the actual handbooks, which are online. If you go into Blackboard and you click on Community, you'll see one of the organizations is the Doctorate of Leadership Administration. If you click that document, you'll find on the tabs different areas you can go into to find these samples. We also can provide hard copy samples as well out of my office, but really Blackboard's the place to go. I do want to remind everybody as we change our platform, we'll be moving away from Blackboard. They'll be also on the new platform as well.
And we'll lay that information out to students so that they won't have to be concerned about how they transfer from the one platform to the next platform.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. You know, it'll be a seamless transition.
One last question for you, Dr. Stinnett. What is the role then of the cohort coordinator as it relates to the practicum and getting the students through that particular process?
So the coordinator for us, and Dr. Nichols, you happen to be one of our coordinators, they're critical to making sure you stay on pace. They will provide opportunities and meetings and times for you to meet and discuss, especially if you're having problems, or support. They can help you understand the process, make sure you're following an organization standard that'll make it easier for you, so you're not really getting bogged down in the actual building the portfolio, but you're actually getting something out of the experience. The whole point here is that you're learning and becoming a better leader, not completing a giant binder. We want our students to understand that you should be reflecting about your leadership. Our coordinator is that support mechanism and that person they're going to talk to. I think that the other key for the whole practicum process is that coordinator is going to be a mentor, as well as give advice on, you know, what are the things you're seeing in the leadership continuum and as you're going through the program. So they're pretty critical to our world here in the university.
So if you've been concerned about the practicum experience, the things that Charles Youngs has shared with us, that Dr. Stinnett has shared with us today, those things are at your disposal. Not only accessing this video, but also looking at the documents that are on currently our Blackboard platform. This is a wonderful journey, and we want to make sure that you're successful.